Which brings me to my next issue. I swear to God, I'm sick and tired of all these love stories for the rich. For some reason, it's like we can only tell romance stories featuring the wealthy. And when poor or precarious people are on there, it's either for comedic relief or they're getting paired with a rich fella in some kind of Cinderella story. The African shows I've watched most recently all tell stories of rich protagonists. There's Blood and Water with a rich family and a poor family, How to Ruin Christmas again with a rich and poor family thing, Isoken with a white man, The Wedding Party 1 and 2 overflowing with wealthy people. It's like we can only tell such fanciful falling in love stories about the rich. Like we can't imagine telling such soft stories about people overwhelmed with anxiety about how they'll pay their rent. Is this our interpretation of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? A conviction that people racked with anxiety about the rising cost of living cannot be the protagonists in a sweet romantic story? They're not there yet, I guess. If you're still worrying about food, you cannot possibly have the capacity to worry about a romantic interest. Or so we're encouraged to believe by these narratives. It feels to me like an erasure of poor people, an erasure of average people. Beyond an erasure, I think it also functions as capitalist propaganda designed to elevate the lives of the wealthy and fan the flames of the desire for such a lifestyle in us. It makes love and romance look like something that is exclusive to the wealthy. Love and romance are free and accessible, at least in theory, to all human beings, yet somehow the stories make it look like it goes hand in hand with wealth. I think it's closely related to the growth of that whole no cookie for broke man. If you're broke, somehow there's a prevailing narrative about how you don't deserve the cookie. It's crazy because most of us are broke, which is to say most or at least many men are broke. While this love only for those who can afford it thinking affects both men and women, the argument can be made that it affects men more. You hear young men complaining about not being able to compete with the older, moneyed men when it comes to winning the affections of young women. As the great Fatboy Gwash told us, which is to say, young women go for rich men, sponsors, blessers. In this film, Diddy's father is a wealthy lawyer, Raj is some kind of financial type, an investment banker. Then there's the CEO of the hotel who's into the Indian Galila. Society equates masculinity with financial muscle, and so men who are lacking financially are also perceived and perceive themselves to be lacking somehow as men. This is dangerous in a capitalist society which is structured in ways that allow only a few to flourish at the top, while majorities struggle to eke out a living at the bottom. How can we suggest that only wealthy people, wealthy men, deserve love and companionship and affection? Also, this conflation of wealth with morality and goodness in capitalist society is nuts. Rich men deserve the cookie because they're rich, and somehow that also means they're good, and poor men don't deserve it because they're broke and therefore not good or deserving. It's class warfare. This idea that only people of a certain class deserve a certain standard of living and comfort, this dearth of romantic stories starring poor people is pure capitalist propaganda and it needs to end. I want to see poor people falling in love and supporting each other through the main hardships of life. That's what I want to see. I've seen enough of the fantastical escapist fairy tale stories and now I'm ready for some real world romance with real people. I can get how one can get on board with it no cookie for broke men argument. If men believe that all they bring to the table is money and refuse to be supportive partners in other ways, then definitely no romance without finance. That's the rules of the game you've set, and that's your problem if you're losing. In order for the no cookie for broke men thing to end, men have to start bringing more to the table and being equal partners. Except y'all still want patriarchal shit like being the head of the household, which means there's no romance without finance. I swear, no romance without finance. I think a lot about the conversation that's on YouTube between James Baldwin and Nikki Giovanni. He talks about how when men don't have something to bring home, when they don't have money, they just don't come home altogether. And Nikki's like, what she cares about is you. You just come home. Well, deal.
We're not like in disagreement. What I'm trying to maybe get you to relate to is that, and I lay it on black men because I'm a black woman.
You have every right to.
I'm sure it's that arbitrary.
No, you have every right to.
But a guy, let's say a guy's going with girl.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're going with Maybelle. And Maybelle gets pregnant. All of a sudden, you can't speak to Maybelle because you don't have the money for a crib, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She doesn't need a crib. The baby's going to sleep someplace. If you can follow me for 2 seconds, wait. Baby's going to sleep someplace. The baby's going to eat something. But what she needs at that moment is a man. And in order, if the man functions as a man, which is not necessarily a provider for all that stuff, because everybody can understand why you can't buy something. You don't have a job. You didn't have a job when you always going to bed. Why you gonna get a job because she got pregnant? You understand? There's no job. But what she needs as a man to come by and say, hey, baby, you look good. And black men refuse to function like that because they say, I want to bring the crib when I come.
Baby,
you're never going to get the crib.
Baby.
Bring yourself.
Baby, I agree with you. I understand what you're saying, But let me tell you this. You may be absolutely right, and you are right in your point of view.
It's arbitrary.
But you have to understand my point of view.
I'm trying.
And in my point of view, well, if you were pregnant, I would act very differently. But that's me. That's something else. But from the man's point of view, given the fact, as we said much earlier, that the standards of the civilization into which you were born are first outside of you. And by the time you get to be a man, they're inside of you. And this is not susceptible to any kind of judgment. It's a fact. If you're treated a certain way, you become a certain kind of person. If certain things describe you as being real, they're real for you, whether they're real or not. And in this civilization, a man who cannot support his wife and his child is not a man.
You don't have to have money to come. And this is my thing too. Men have to realize that they can bring more to the table than money. The only problem with that realization is that you then have to bring more to the table than just money. Money is easy. The rest, being a present partner, that shit is far harder than just buying and paying for shit. When Raj tells Ima that he's going to marry the girl from the beach, Ima says that's not how things are done in Nigeria.
Seriously? See, I don't know how people do it in India. But this is Niger. I just walk up to a woman and just say, hey, you are my wife. It doesn't work like that. You have to toast her. Take her out. Take her friends out.
Okay. Thanks for your brilliant advice.
You're welcome.
But my dear advisor, to do all of that, I need to find her first.
He says in Nigeria you have to toast the girl, take her out, take her friends out, that sort of thing. Once again, the suitability of a man is linked to his economic status. This man paying for things and buying things for women is so problematic to me, especially in the way it's commonly